here's the first thing. The first aspect of the blessing, every time a blessing was given, there was appropriate, meaningful touch. Appropriate, meaningful touch. Now, let me get you to do something. This won't strain you out too bad. And if it does, feel free to be really uncomfortable. But just lean over and shake somebody's hand around you. Just shake somebody's hand, say, hey, way to show up today. And so somebody around you, shake their hand. Okay, all right, good job. Appropriate, meaningful touch. Physiologically, it's a tremendous way to bless others. Yes, your eyes will dilate when you hold their hand, but guess what else happened when you shook their hand? Their blood pressure just went down. Their hemoglobin level just went up, which doesn't look like it excites you, but that's the agent in the red blood cells that helps to carry oxygen that aren't. UCLA, in their tactile research program, did a study for women. Now, I don't know exactly what that is for men because they didn't study it for men, but they studied women, and what they decided and discovered was the average woman needs 8 to 12 appropriate touches every day just to maintain appropriate, health. And of course, guys, we hear that and think, oh, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like here. I'd say, oh, okay, lower medical bills. That's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Here's the second one, right? The blessing was always verbalized. Now, this is hugely important, okay? Don't raise your hand, but did any of you grow up in a home where you knew you were loved, but you never once heard it? Well, when we don't hear it verbally, we're left wondering, what would they say? Let me give you a quick example. After I mentioned earlier that I grew up not knowing my dad, and then I hated him, and then I ended up after I became a Christian, I forgave him and was able to try to build a relationship with him. Well, does this not sound like an old 3rd Marine Division guy? He has a major heart attack, tries to drive himself to the hospital, and I will never forget walking in, and here's my last 5 minutes on earth with my dad, and I at the time, I thought these were the last 5 minutes on earth with my dad, and I pat him on the leg. Now, what was number one? What was number one? Appropriate, meaningful touch. Because here's what you got to understand. Once you get God's blessing, then you can even give it back to people that never gave it to you. Because why did my dad never give it to me? It's because he never got it. He never knew how important it was. He didn't go to God's Word and see how do you build a great relationship. So I pat him there, bright my eyes. Dad, we're praying for you. He goes, what's going on? I go, well, I said, he goes, tell me. I go, well, they're saying it's going to be really tough, but we're praying for you. We believe you're going to pray, pull through. I'll never forget as long as I live. Here's Joe, my older brother. Jeff was out of state, so he couldn't be there, and here's me. My dad looks up at me, and he goes, well, boys, I guess I ought to say something. And I remember thinking, absolutely, this is very appropriate. I had waited all my life, and you know what I thought I was going to hear? I'd waited all my life to hear something positive from my dad. And here it is, the last 5 minutes I think that I'll ever have with my dad. And he goes, well, boys, I guess I ought to say something. And we wait, and we wait, and we wait, and he doesn't say anything. And the nurse comes through and pushes him through those metal doors. Now, that was the closest. Now, does this sound like an old tough Marine? He lived another 5 years, okay? But that was the closest on earth I ever came to hearing it. I can't tell you, I have tried to fill in that blank 10,000 times. Maybe it was the war, maybe it was the generation, maybe it was because he never heard it. You got to say it, all right? Here's number 3, all right? Number 3 is you attach high value. Now, what does that mean? You attach high value. When you bless someone, do you know what it literally means to bless someone? If you'll look up here just a second, it means that you're going to, we'll go more into this in a later session, but here is a brand new crisp $1 bill, and tell me your first name? Dana. Dana, and so Dana, here is a $1 bill. Now, if I had a $1 coin, it would actually be a little bit more accurate, because what it literally means to bless someone, it means to add weight or value to them. And the reason why was, back a long time ago with coins, they weren't smeltered just exactly, you know what I mean, the way they are now. So to really find out how valuable it was, you did what? You put it in a scale and weighed it. So the greater the weight, the more value. And do you get the picture? When you bless someone, you add to their life. That's the picture, is adding weight, value to their life, saying to them that they're valuable. You know what that does to a kid? And these other two are so quick, hang with me, is that helps a kid realize that they have a special future. That appropriate touch, verbalized words that attach high value. Now, do you remember the Christmas Story, the movie where he turns in his theme and he's thinking he's going to, the teacher and all the people are going to carry him around? Remember? Well, that was me. I'm thinking, I'm going to get an A, and I get a D. And I remember sitting that down, and I'll never forget. Now, Jeff had already shown Mom the paper, and I had to show it to Mom, and I'm at that kitchen table, and my head's down, and she did really good at making me look at her. Good eye contact. So she goes, look at me. So I have to lift up, and she goes, look at me. And I go, what? And she goes, well, you didn't do the footnotes, and you hand wrote that. What was with that? And I said, yeah. And he goes, wait. She goes, look at me. She goes, but you know what? Now listen to this. She says to me, you know what, though? You do such a good job of using words. I wouldn't be surprised if you grew up someday to use words to help other people. Now, I can tell you what my mom was wearing when she said that, where she was sitting at the table. None of my teachers were telling me that, that's for sure, you know. You know what wraps it up is the last thing, here it is, genuine commitment. You don't just talk about the blessing, but you say, you know what, I'm here to give it to you, okay? The last day of my dad's life, I held his hand for 8.5 hours at a hospice. I won't go into details. He died of congestive heart and lung failure. It's a terrible way to die. Basically choked to death. And the last day of my dad's life, I had him cuss at me for praying for him. Now, I didn't preach, but if you've ever been in a situation like that, it was so horrific. I just prayed that God would comfort him, and I get cussed at. That was my blessing from my dad. But I thank God that I had a mom that gave me the blessing every day. You know, I just can't challenge you enough to be somebody that understands how important these 5 things are, called the blessing.